to Our Pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Except when we are on Intermission, bitches! Where we are reading The Fires of Treason by Michele Quirke, and we are finishing up the plot of the book. Yes. But before we dive into it, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I haven't really been reading a ton because of the world.
Life. Because of the reality of our United States.
Because of the world. So what I have been doing is watching a lot of YouTube where people are playing board games.
Yes.
And it's just, that's become a new hobby apparently, because I can't even like bring myself to try and play a board game apparently at this point. I'm just watching other people play board games and it has been a delight. But I have been really enjoying this particular YouTube channel, Foster the Meeple, which is such a cute name because Meeple are like the little people that you move around, like the little tokens or whatever, the people in board games. And it's like Foster the People, get it? Foster the People, like the pumped up kicks, and they have videos about Kickstarters, and it's like pumped up Kickstarter for a game that they're promoting or whatever. It's a very cute channel run by a husband and wife, and they are so positive and just a lot of fun. They have really good rapport between the two of them. They're very opposite personalities, but I really like the wife. She's so bubbly and positive and fun, and she tries to do these little puns and stuff, and her husband is very much like a counter to that, where he's a little more serious, but he's still fun too. But they do a lot of playing of board games, and so I've been watching a lot of their playthroughs of games, and they're long playthroughs and everything. But I don't know why, that's just been like a calming experience for me to just watch people on YouTube play board games, and I especially like Foster the Meeple. They have a pretty big following within the board gaming community, so not hard to find them. I looked up just a few board games on YouTube and their channel immediately was suggested to me. So they're very easy to find. But I think Jeff and Jamie are a lot of fun. If anyone's looking for a board game channel to follow on YouTube, highly recommend. I also have been, this is typical for me, I do usually watch/listen to a lot of ASMR. But I'll just recommend a ASMR channel that I really like, Batala ASMR. Batala is this creator that is just like a really calming presence, and I especially like Batala's videos to help like go to sleep or to calm down. Very relaxing, and there's just something about like the vibe of Batala's videos, and I just really like Batala ASMR. I know everybody's probably aware of like GB ASMR. I also like Tiptoe Tingles. That's another good ASMR if you're looking for something like faster. But Batala ASMR, I've been really watching a lot of recently. I really like Batala. And then as far as watching, I have watched a few things. So my husband and I watched Pitch Perfect recently, and it was his first time seeing it, apparently.
Oh my gosh, it was his first time? I didn't know that it was his first time.
I started watching it because I was like, you know what? I haven't seen this in a long time, and I want to watch a movie that I've seen before. And Pitch Perfect, I have a lot of nostalgia for because it came out when we were in college.
Yes.
I think I was a freshman in college when it came out. And I remember it was extremely popular at the time because this was like the height of Glee and all this. And everyone was really just starved for people we didn't know who were soon to become celebrities doing covers of popular songs.
Yes.
And mashups as well. We needed lots of mashups, and that's what they gave us in this was a movie about lots of mashups that was like Mean Girls meets Glee, and maybe throw in some like 80s movie tropes, and that's what Pitch Perfect was. But I have a lot of nostalgia for it, but there are so many cringe moments when you're rewatching that, and my husband was like, yeah, this is a product of its time, and it's funny for me to like watch it, and like he laughed at times and everything, but it's funny for me to like watch his reaction and know that like I really liked that movie for a long time, and I still have nostalgia factor for it and like it, but it's funny to see somebody who has no background with it to just be like, yup, that was a movie. Good movie. Okay. So that was an interesting experience, to say the
It
least.
wasn't like when I actually showed my the people I live with Drop Dead Gorgeous, and I was like, no, this is a fantastic movie, except for that one character.
One character that changes it all.
Yes, so
The other
unfortunate.
thing I started watching was St. Denis Medical, which is another mockumentary type style
Mm.
show on NBC. This one is set in a hospital, and there's 2 episodes out already. I can already tell that this is going to be a new obsession of mine
Oh,
because
good.
it's going to be in the style of The Office and Parks and
Mm.
Rec and Abbott Elementary. These are like mockumentaries are a very popular type of show to have.
Yes.
And I think that networks are kind of realizing we need to have at least one of those on at any given time to
Yes.
have some success in our comedy lineup. And I think that they're maybe shouldn't have gone with another medical show because I feel like there's so many medical shows on right now,
Yeah.
but I
But
still
that's
think this
probably
one is
why they did
probably
it.
going to be more popular than their like drama medical shows, in my opinion. There were some very funny moments in this show as well that I really appreciated, and just like pointing out some of the flaws within the medical system and how different things happen. Like this nurse tries to leave, she's going to leave early to go see her kids play and ends up like trying to get into her car in the parking lot and noticing like, oh, a woman just passed out in the parking lot. So she has to go back to work. Like
Yep.
those type of things. Just very like, oh yeah, that's definitely a thing.
Oh, and
So
I'm looking at the lineup, and Allison Tolman, I really like her. She was in season 1 of Fargo, which I watched recently, and she did a really good job. So
which one is she?
she's the nurse with workaholic
Oh, okay.
tendencies.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh
she's great. She
yeah.
easily was the one that me and my husband watching this, we were like, we really like her.
Yeah,
And
I really like her. I'm like interested in more of her stuff after watching Fargo, where I was like, wow, she did a really good
sure.
job. So
The
interesting.
actress that plays the hospital administrator that's supposed to be like the Michael Scott of it all,
Yeah.
I think that character will have a better build up, but when you start out in a show like this, it's very hard to connect with that character, I think. That nobody really is like, oh, that one's my favorite, and this one's going to be a really great character. I think it takes a while for a character like that to kind of feel like there's more to them.
Hmm.
So right now, she comes off a little unhinged, but I think she's a great actress. I've seen her in other things, and she's in like the Goldbergs and stuff. So she does a lot of other stuff, but I have high hopes for the show, and I don't think it's going to disappoint me because it's very much following a formula and can deliver on that, it seems, with the lineup of the cast too.
Oh,
And there's some
good.
people from Superstore that are in it, which I was really excited because Sandra from Superstore plays an RN in
Oh,
this. I love
good.
Sandra.
I love
And
Sandra.
also, uh, the guy who was the pharmacist on Superstore
Oh my
is a
God, I
doctor in
remember him.
this.
Okay, yeah.
And he pretty much recycles that part, but just like in a doctor, it seems, in these first 2 episodes. And I'm like, he will be perfect in this because it's just like the very bloated ego man who is trying to save the world.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
But Hannah, that's about all I've got. It's just been a lot of YouTube.
Hey,
So,
happens to the best of us.
what have you been reading, watching, and or
So for
enjoying?
me, it's a lot of audiobooks because I feel like I was in an audiobook mood recently. And
Sure.
I also feel like I'm like listening to audiobooks, but I'm not like always actively listening. So it's more for vibes than it is for like deep
Mm-hmm.
actual analysis, which I think is fine. But I read Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This is a horror book. And it follows this character who named Misha, who makes all these horror films, and he is a gay man, but he's not really like out in his hometown community. Like he just doesn't talk about the fact that he's gay there, and he like lives in LA, and like lots of people know he's gay, but they don't mention it, and like it's always kind of like
Okay.
understood in TV shows. But then he starts getting hunted by like the evil characters in his movies, and he doesn't really
Oh,
know what's going on, and it's very like suspenseful and like edge of your seat, like what's happening. And he like recently got nominated for an Oscar, but he's also in fights with his his development company because he has like creative rights over this TV show where he wants these two agents to get together in this like lesbian storyline, and they kind of want him to back off of that or to like kill them off,
Hmm.
and this is all happens in the beginning. So it's kind of like a what's actually going on, who's in power, those types of things. And I thought it was interesting. Like I think it took some wild swings, but I would say this is more like Scream adjacent of like satire horror than it is like
It seems like
straightforward
there's a lot
horror.
going on there.
There's so much going on. It's really good, but also like a little bit confusing because there's like random
Hmm.
cutscenes where you're seeing something
Mm.
and you're not really sure why. And like it has a lot of like people, there are certain narrators who are horror novelists who like did voices for it at certain parts. So like
Hmm.
Stephen Graham Jones is in it, and T. Kingfisher
Oh,
is in it, and Sarah Gailey is in it, and like
okay.
Mara Wilson was a narrator. So the like
Wow.
narration is really interesting with like how it does it. But I think I was sometimes confused, and I wonder if I would enjoy the better like book better upon like
Yeah.
re-listen, or if I was in a space where I was like a more active listener. But overall, I thought
Hmm.
it was a good book. It was fun horror. It's definitely like horror, like you're going to read body horror
Sure.
elements and you're going to read like these creepy moments.
Sure.
But I thought it was interesting how it like kind of pulled in real world elements to this. It talks about like AI and it talks about all these different things and different powers. So I thought that was really interesting. But it was good. I don't know if it was like one of my best reads of the year, but I think
Sure.
it's getting a lot of hype over on Bookstagram. And I would say, like, yeah, I could see why that's like a good hype book for it. So,
Hmm.
and then I also listened to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, read by Stephen Fry.
What did
And
you think?
I thought it was zany and fun. I don't think it like this is the best book ever, but I thought it was humorous. Like I thought I liked the sarcasm. I liked like I did the audiobook so you're not having to
Sure.
like read it, and I don't know how much I would enjoy it. And I don't think you were a fan of The Hitchhiker's Guide
I,
to the
I was
Galaxy.
not a huge fan of this, but it
Yeah.
was definitely a hype thing. I think that it was hyped up so much and so many people talked about like what a great book this was that I think I read the book from the library, the physical copy. Uh
Mm.
and I just kind of thought it was a little too quirky. And I don't know if quirky is even the right maybe trying too hard to be funny is what
Mm.
maybe got me.
See, I think it gave me like Witch vibes by Ava Ibbotson that we did with
Okay. I could see that.
fiction fans. And so I think I was like, when I was reading it, it gave me so much of that vibes that I like really
Hmm.
enjoyed the sarcasm and really
Sure.
enjoyed some of the absurdity. Parts of it got a little like, I don't need to be listening right now. I could just kind
I
of
can
tune this
see how,
out.
especially in an audio form, it'd be easy to tune out.
Yeah, where you're just like, oh yeah, they're doing something right now.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really funny. I liked the like you were just an experience for an experiment for like, spoilers for one of the most famous books, but like
Hmm.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Go read it before I say this, but it's like Earth was just an experiment for mice. I'm like, that is absurd and funny for
Yeah.
me. Like I
I mean,
liked
there
it.
are a lot of funny
Yeah.
moments in that book for sure.
And an existential robot who like depressed a machine into like
Yep.
committing suicide. They're, like that's it's funny. So I
Mhm.
liked it, but I also don't think I'm in the sci-fi world as much, and I don't think I've seen as much hype for it. Like I think I knew in the back of my
Honestly, I
mind that a
was
lot
not
of
really that into sci-fi when I read it.
that's
This was
true.
like one of the books that I read when I was like starting to get back into reading,
Mm.
and it was very much like on like all-time favorite lists and stuff like that
Oh,
of
okay.
books that people had, and I was like picking up a bunch of those, and I just remember just being like, I don't think this was that good.
I
I wouldn't
I
say I
liked
hated
it.
it though, but
No. I definitely liked it. I thought it was funny and like absurd and like a good book for how busy I've been and how much of a
sure,
reading slump I've been in this year, where I was like, oh yeah,
sure,
this is like a
fit the
five,
mood.
it's like under 6 hours. So like
Hmm.
quick audio, Stephen Fry, he's awesome, so I will
Hmm.
listen to that. And then the last book I will talk about here is Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons and Dragons by Ben
Oh, nice.
Riggs. So I am living in Wisconsin now, and as many know, my husband is a huge Dungeons and Dragons fan. And this is the history of Dungeons and Dragons, and it's very interesting because it goes into all the mistakes that the company made that kind of ended up making them sell to a rival later in life because they just kept making huge swings and misses on an economic sense. So I think it's really interesting for those who are fans of Dungeons and Dragons, or for those who just kind of have a cursory interest in it to like hear
Hmm.
about it. Because I really liked this. Like Ben Riggs was a huge D&D fan, and he really does a deep dive. He grew up in the Milwaukee area, and Dungeons and Dragons was started in Western Wisconsin. So, or not Western, like very central Wisconsin, but it was started about like
Okay.
90 minutes, or no, it's like 30 minutes outside Milwaukee. It's not that far away. And so, hearing about the history from like a huge fan who's also looking into like the economic problems was really interesting, and learning about like what happened with TSR that made it like super successful, and then ways it really failed its employees and it failed like
Hmm.
its fans and things like that. And so I think
Also having
he's,
that local connection too, I think sometimes
yeah,
helps.
yeah, because like you could tell that he knew what areas he was talking about and why
Yeah.
they were important, and like why having it at this like Lake Geneva area was so important to them. So I really liked it. I would say the only thing is I did this also via audiobook, and for the life of me, we know I'm bad with names, and like I cannot remember people's names in this book. So he would like bring back this person, and I'm like,
So if we were to give you an AR quiz,
I would fail.
0 points.
I would get 0 points because he would be like, "Oh, so and so came back," and I'm like, "I'm sure this was someone we've met before." Like,
Oh no.
because it's, I mean, there's so many people who were
Yeah.
involved, and so you're just sitting there like, "Yeah, I cannot," and like they're all just a bunch of white people names. So like you're reading about all these white people who were super into D&D, and I'm like, I cannot remember your name. I'm so sorry.
Kevin and Keith and Jason.
Yeah. And like
I
there's
have no
one
idea if those are
woman.
the
And so
names. I'm
like
just throwing out names that sound like
exactly.
D&D
But
people.
like even with like one of the main like he makes a good point of one of the people who was like the main head honcho during TSR's decline was a woman. And he kind of talks about like, yes, she failed, but also there's a lot of sexism that goes involved that's involved with this. And like and he also points out that like he wanted to interview her and she turned him down. And he, so like there are points where he's like, I think she could say this if she were here. She didn't want to, and that's her right. And so he handles
Mhm.
it really well, and he notes like the sexism in it and notes like how much she cared about it and areas she failed. So it's not saying like woman equals perfect, but it's like, hey, everyone is flawed in this. But like
Right.
I don't remember her name because she was the only woman.
That's what you should remember. The only one.
So I'm just like, I can't remember any of these people's names. So that is the only thing I'm like, I wish I had a physical copy so I could like look at the names and
Yeah,
remember
to
who was
flip back and
involved.
forth.
Because like when you just hear them at two times the speed, you're like, "Ah, couldn't be me."
Man, you listen to all of those at 2 times the speed?
Yes, I always listen to books at two
Oh
times the
man.
speed. I think Stephen Fry had to listen at like 1.75. But yeah, I will always do two times
Especially
the
with
speed. So
accents, I cannot do
yeah.
very
Mm.
fast.
No. So those are my recent audiobooks, three audiobooks all in a row. I'm just doing so good. I've started reading more physical books, and we'll talk about those soon because you and I are recording twice in 1 week. So
Hmm.
I will talk about those on another episode. But for what I am watching, speaking of Brittany Snow, I watched John Tucker Must Die, and I also forced someone in my household to watch a movie that they had never seen before. But it was my
What
sister.
a weird coincidence that we are watching these movies that were extremely popular and Mean Girls-ish.
Yes. So the thing is Stardew Valley, which is a game that
Video
you
game.
just have a you play a farm or you go to mining, and it's very easy, and it's also very addictive because here's the thing, it only saves at the end of the day, Laura. So you're like, well,
Means nothing
I'll
to me. I have no idea what that means.
so it just means like you have to spend the whole day farming, and then when you go to bed that night, like it's a very fast-paced day, like
It
each
resets
quote
or what?
unquote day. No, it just like if you closed out of your game when you've already done a lot of work, you lose all your stuff. So like if you start a day, you're gonna be like, well, I'll finish my day so I can
It's
save it,
it's
even
like
though I
you
might not
bale a
close
bunch of
it.
hay, then all of a
Hmm.
sudden you close out and you're like, nope, you didn't bale any
You
hay.
didn't bail, you have to go bail that hay
Right.
again. Like, and so that, so you always are like, oh, okay, so it's supposed to be easy because the days go by pretty
That
fast.
sounds
It's
like
not
the
like real
most
time.
infuriating farming experience I've ever heard of.
um, that is the only infuriating part. But the thing is then you get addicted because you like, you wake up the next day and you're like, okay, so my day was done. I can go leave the room. And then you're like, but what if my crops grew? Maybe I should go see if my crops are out there. And then you go look and you're like, what if I picked my crops? And then you're like, well, it's already noon, so I might as well just like finish out the day. And then 5 hours went by, and you're like, I haven't peed like all day. Um,
Amazes me is I feel like people are probably thinking more about the farming in this game than actual farmers are likely thinking about their crops.
I know. And so it's a problem. And I've been playing a lot of Stardew Valley. And so and like you can also play if you like
Is
have
this a PlayStation or Xbox or what is this on?
it's a lot of different things. It can be on a
Okay.
computer, it can be on
I'm
yeah.
not aware of
Um
games.
yeah, no, you're fine. But I have it on a Nintendo Switch, and you can also play with other people who have similar gaming consoles. So you can like have a farm with a friend on like Nintendo
Oh,
Switch.
so you can like work together on it.
Yes, I haven't done that yet, but my sister-in-law and I did sit and do our own farms on couches next to each other for like
You
four
didn't farm
hours
together?
on Saturday. No, we did not farm together. Um,
Why?
I don't know. So we were doing this like concurrently where we were like 4 days apart and we were just sitting in the living room in silence. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I've been playing Stardew. I'm supposed to be reading books for the podcast and I've just been here for 6 hours. So I turned on John Tucker Must Die and she
A
had
little
never seen it
reset.
before. It was, I mean, like there are so many weird parts of John Tucker Must Die. Why is the
Oh my
vegan a
gosh.
slut?
Yes.
Like,
So
why
many
did
things that don't make sense.
there's so many things that don't make sense, but one of them isn't Ashanti because she was hilarious in that movie.
Yeah.
Um, John Tucker loves people on top of the pyramid. Like the line reading in that is so
Very good
funny.
delivery.
They have such good delivery in that show. There's so many parts where like why they didn't know what vegans were because there's an entire scene of like them all eating chocolate. And I'm like, that's all milk chocolate. And Sophia
You
Bush
don't
could not
know. It
eat
could
it.
be vegan chocolate.
It's not. Like it's like they had so
They
much
just
product
because they didn't
placement.
clarify.
It's like Whoppers. It's like those are milk-based
Oh,
products.
I didn't realize that
Like-
the products were shown.
Yeah, they have so much product. There's so much Diet Coke in that movie. It's just like covered in Diet Coke
Maybe if they
lore.
did Oreos, then we would
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And so they're like eating frosting off each other. It's such a weird movie. But like Sophia Bush is a vegan and
And
there's so
also
many
to try to
weird
believe that Brittany Snow is like,
is
she's so
awkward.
awkward and
Or
no guy would want to date her.
and like
What?
Penn Badgley has like half an ounce of baby fat still left on him, and so they're
Yeah, and
like
we're like,
not very
ugly.
cute. Yeah,
Ew. Other
like,
brother,
other
not
the
attractive.
other Tucker, like, but
And it's like, oh, look at him.
we had a good time. It is still very funny for like it wasn't her going like, well, that was a movie, Hannah. It was like that was actually funny, and we had a good time watching it. So, we did that in Stardew Valley. So that's pretty much what I've been enjoying is very specific games. So, um. I hope everyone is enjoying their farms on Stardew. I did a terrible job with my first farm and I started a new one and I'm surprisingly much better at it now. Not
What kind of
surprising,
farms
but
are they?
you get to pick which different farm layout you want. And so you kind of so like the entire purpose of the story is your grandfather died and he left you his farm. And so you have
That's
to like
morbid. Okay.
you have to like get it, but it's also he like comes back as a ghost in the third year
Oh
and he
my.
judges how good you did. And so
Oh,
I didn't realize that because
get out of here, Grandpa.
I don't read a lot of things in Stardew Valley. So like all of a sudden he just showed up and he was like, you have a terrible farm. And I was like, excuse you.
Go
And,
away.
so this time around I'm trying to do a better farm and try to complete more tasks and make more friends because you have to like say hi to townspeople to like get their hearts up and make them like you. And then you can get like
Probably
married to
also to get them to buy things, right? I would
well, no, you
assume.
just sell them to the general store. So, but
Oh,
you have to
I
like give
didn't know
them.
if this was maybe like a to gain customers situation if
Oh
you're
no.
doing farmers markets or
No,
something.
but you
Oh,
can gain a wife or a husband, and you
I
do
should have
that by
been one of
giving.
the creators on this game because these people have not thought some of these things through. It could have been a lot harder.
It could have been, but don't make it harder because it's also supposed to be enjoyable. But this is a guy who like created the game, and he like gives you updates for free, and he's kind of like, yeah, this is a simple game, but as long as people are enjoying playing it, I'm gonna keep updating it. And, like he's pretty chill, so that's awesome. But I last time around forgot to say hi to people, but these people say the most out of pocket things, Laura. Like when you start reading it,
That
you're like,
seems right.
what
Okay.
just happened? There was one day where I'm trying to make friends with this woman who owns a shop
See,
in the
that's where
desert.
I'm out. You got to make friends. No.
It's easier than making friends in real life. I'm trying to make friends because she gives you recipes so you can learn to cook things. And so I keep going to the desert to say hi to her. And one day she goes, "My name's not really Sandy. I just do it. I just say it is because it's good for business." And I was like,
Why is that good for
"Sandy,"
business?
because she works in a desert, Laura. And I'm just like, "But
Oh,
what's your
good
real
God.
name?" Now I'm sitting here being like, "Well, what's your real name? All you've told me is a lie." And there's
What
like,
business does she have in the desert?
she works at an oasis. She sells things for you in the desert. And then
I'm
there
sensing
are,
some plot holes.
and then I like started selling blueberries at the local place. Like, and I
Okay.
was talking to someone and they're like, "Hey, Pierre says that he's got blueberries in his backyard. It looks like you've got some competition." And I'm like, "Those are my blueberries. Pierre's just out there lying to people. What is he talking
So
about?"
is this somebody else or is this an NPC?
It's an NPC. He's just
That's
lying.
weird.
And there's just so many out of pocket things that are said. Like it's a wild time. So, but I've played it for
Interesting.
many hours. Many hours of my life have been
And
down the
how do you
drain.
win the game?
You don't. You just continue to, well, you can get a perfection score. So if you do like all these
Okay.
things, if you ship all the crops, if you donate everything to the
So it's just
museum,
like a continuous thing that never ends.
it could potentially never end. Yeah, if you wanted to keep going. So,
Okay.
um, but yeah, I have chickens and I have a duck and I have cows. So, Um, and I've had many a time of talking to the people in my household about the fact that they always name their farmer after themselves. And I'm like, no, I'm going to give them a fun little name. Like,
What's your farmer's name?
I have two different farmers. One is named Mitzi, and she has a dog named
Okay.
Bitsy. And then I
Mitzi and
did
Bitsy.
a
Okay.
lot of rhyming for the animals. So I had a Titsy
Okay.
and a Zitsy and a Litsy.
Okay.
And now I have Inez, which I also think
On
is
the
fun.
same
And
farm or
no, on a different farm.
oh, I
There's
was gonna
another
say,
farm
what the
where it's
heck?
no,
Inez
no,
is
no,
the only one that's out
no, no,
here
no,
with a different type of name.
no, no. And Inez is my other farmer. So I have
Okay.
Inez and I have Mitzi because those are fun names that I'm just like, yeah, they're
Okay.
farmers. And Inez has blue hair and Mitzi has red hair because that was my first one. So,
Okay. The first
yeah.
one was modeled off you a little bit.
Yeah, but I wasn't gonna name her after me. Imagine having a farmer named Hannah.
I mean, that exists.
I know, but like that's so
There are probably
boring.
many farmers named Hannah.
I know, but it's so boring in the like context of the game. Like you want to have a little fun
I get
name
what
where
you're
people are
saying
like,
to
"Hey, Mitzi,"
like it's a
like
fantasy.
yeah,
Make it
like
make it fantastical.
exactly. Like you're running a farm where you slay little slime balls in mines. Like a lot of this game does not make sense unless you played
I was
it.
gonna say there's seems like a lot of plot holes here.
There are so many plot holes, but that's half the fun, Laura. Like, there is magic
That
that
sounds like
exists
a
in
game
this
I would
world.
not play, that I would be
Well, you have
too
a real farm, so you're like,
too
well, this is
no,
just my
I
daily life.
well, I feel like I would also just get frustrated with like this is not accurate. So that's like I don't have many of those opportunities in real life. Like I know other people can be like you, Hannah, can watch Law and Order
Law and
SVU and
Order.
like point out like, well, that's not how that would work. That's not how that would work. Stardew Valley would probably be my opportunity to do that.
That is
So I
your
don't
Law
think
and
I could
Order.
handle it.
Yeah, so, but with that said, should we dive into the rest of the plot?
Let's do it.
So, Elizabeth is hiding with Greg, and they don't know who is upstairs. And all of a sudden, Mary comes. Well, and Greg has this flashback of when he and Elizabeth were hiding in the armory that they weren't supposed to go
Hmm.
into when they were younger, and the dad's searching for them, and he knows that they're going to be beaten when they're found. And Greg sacrifices
And
himself for
well,
Elizabeth.
Bess like comes out and is defending Greg
Yes.
with a sword, and then it kind of becomes a shameful moment for Greg because he was too cowardly to stand up to his dad.
And then Bess was able to. And so Greg is like, or the dad's like, okay, I'll let you guys go because your sister has chutzpah. And
But don't
like,
let it happen again,
but don't
or I'll
let this
stab
ever
you with this
happen again.
sword.
Yeah, I'll kill you. And so, he's a really chill guy.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
like Greg's having this flashback, this moment. There's a lot in this book about like unhealed trauma and things like that. Um, and then Mary just decides to take this moment to be like, guess who's outside? And they're like, and Greg's like, no, tell us who is outside. And he
Which,
like,
of course, he is in the right in this because I thought that was
yeah,
weird too for her to just be like, just guess.
I know it was. I
You'll
mean,
never
like,
guess. It's a surprise. And it's like, no, we're not in a surprise situation here. We
and like,
can't handle surprises.
there's a moment where Elizabeth is like, "Hey, Greg, you're overreacting. Mary's always been kind to us. There's no reason." And like,
It's like,
he
no,
is
he's
overreacting
not
because he just had like
overreacting.
a moment of like a flashback that was very hard for him to process. But at the same time, he is concerned for their livelihood. But it ends
Yes.
up being their cousin Clara, who has run away to be with them.
Apparently Bess was writing letters to,
Yeah, she talks about this, how they have one cousin that she trusts to like send for money from, and so she sends a
but
letter
while
to
they
her.
were, it seems like that was a bad timing to like reveal your location and stuff. But what do I know?
Yeah, she no, she literally wrote a letter to Clara and she was like, "Here's where
Yeah.
we are. We need some
And she
money."
wanted money. Yeah.
And Clara brought herself and a carriage
Yes.
and a man named Channing. And
Channing
she's
Tatum.
in love with Channing. Imagine throwing your life away over someone named Channing.
Tatum?
I know, but like,
Hannah, we're millennials. She's all that.
he couldn't make it work with Zoe Kravitz.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's
how
unbelievable.
how can he make it work with anyone else?
Yeah,
So
that is really hard to believe,
I
honestly.
have you seen her? Like, oh my God,
Yes, that's why
Channing.
I'm
Like,
saying it's unbelievable.
I know. I was just like, oh, Channing, beg for her. But also he was not in She's All That, Laura. He was in Step Up and She's the Man.
She's the man. Yeah, not she's all that. I'm kidding. I knew which one I was thinking of because I was thinking of Amanda Bynes. I was picturing the
Oh
soccer
God.
movie.
I
I just said the wrong
frequently
one.
I frequently talk about that movie because I was so obsessed with it. It was one of my cross-stitching movies because
She's
it
the man.
yeah, it had a stacked cast recording. You know how like DVDs used to have like directors like overhead like
Yeah,
talking you through the movie? They
you've
had
told me about this
Oh
before.
yeah, sorry. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. There's so much. Channing Tatum has camel toe and they all mock him about it. Like, never forget. So anyway, Channing's there and Clara's like, "We're gonna run away with you because I was betrothed to this nasty, nasty man."
To an old man who is a baker.
And he was never part of like the royalty until recently. And
He's like a
Elizabeth's really,
baron or something.
yeah. And Elizabeth's confused because she's like,
Well,
"Well,
she's
I've
like
never
very much off put by the fact that he's a baron. She's like, "What? You should have definitely been betrothed to someone of
higher."
higher rank. Like, no way."
And he asked for the union himself, and her dad agrees. So she's like, "That's weird."
This all seems
And
sketchy.
but she also like is totally judging Clara for falling in love with Staple Boy, where she's like, "Ew, he's beneath you. You're like,
Well,
you are
it's
related to royalty. You need to like calm down and keep it in your pants and do your
it's a little
duty."
weird because it's like Elizabeth doesn't she acts like she doesn't want to be put into an arranged marriage, but then she kind of like turns it around on Clara and is like, you shouldn't give up on this Baron, even though you should have higher status,
Well, and she
have
does
a
point
higher
out
status marriage. How dare you
she
turn
does
away
point
from
out
this arranged marriage?
that she thinks Clara is a little bit self-centered and a little bit like too into the finer things of life
Mhm.
and like hasn't really suffered. And so she thinks that she's like very naive about this and she's not going in with both eyes open. And it
Which is
is
weird because she's like, I'm so much older than her. And then it's revealed that they're like 3 months
3 months
apart.
apart. Well, I also
Which is a
think like,
very 16-year-old thing, I will say, to be like,
oh
I'm
my
so much
God,
older.
I'm 3 months older than you. So,
We're like in
uh,
different grades.
famously, I'm over a year older than Laura, and it's very important to our
We
friendship.
were in different grades, guys.
um, but I will say that like this is interesting because it shows the limitations of Elizabeth as someone who was like raised in privilege and how you have
Yeah.
these huge blind spots that you don't understand that like you are part of the hypocrisy that you see in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Um, because she's sitting there being like, "Well, I just don't think you're thinking this through." And like, I've thought it through when I took 5 minutes to run away to find my brother who had committed treason. But like,
I
you're
took
not
five
thinking about this.
minutes.
And she kind of tells her that like it's a foolish mistake. But
Mhm.
Clara like starts talking to Greg and she gives the hard sell. She's like, "Look, I have money. I'm ready to do this, but like, you guys have to
Well,
take
she
us."
also like really throws Channing under the bus and is like, "You guys can't defend yourselves, and I have somebody who can defend all of us. This boy that I'm in love with, who will give his life for all of us because I say so." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And
Well,
then Bess and Greg are both like, "Okay, points."
yeah, points were made, I guess. And Greg is also like on board faster than Bess,
Yeah,
where he's like, Yeah, it makes sense. I guess this is
Like,
what we're
it's true.
doing.
Channing
Yeah.
can defend us and I can't because I'm
Chan-
awful.
Channing has the power of dance.
And we
But
find out he does.
he does. And so they kind of are like, okay, well, if you're doing this, you're going to rough it. And Bess like takes this opportunity to get Clara to swap her carriage, which I was like, why did you guys sell that for more money? But they swap it with the priest so that they can like travel with a wagon, which is more incognito. And
Mhm.
now he has a carriage. So they kind of keep talking. There's a moment where like Greg's on board before Bess, but the second Bess is like, this sounds kind of fun. I'm glad she's here. He's like, it should not be fun. This is serious business. And it's like, you're a hypocrite. You're
The
letting
way
your
that they waffle on this is like, please make up your mind. Do you want Clara to be involved or not?
it's so strange. And like during this time we find out that like they start preparing to leave and Clara definitely isn't thinking things through. Like she
Right.
is like,
She's
this is a
very much
fun
just
little
there, like, I'm
adventure.
I'm with my boyfriend and this is awesome.
And during this time, they're like all kind of sitting there recouping, and Father Timothy comes back and he's like,
But she always just kind of appears out of nowhere.
he comes in and he just like, it's so strange because he's like, look at all these letters I got in support of you. Are you ready for war now? And Greg's like, not really.
And
I'm
he's like,
good.
well, Bernadette's gonna kill all the Catholics. Aren't you gonna feel bad? It's like, that's a lot.
And Greg points out, like, hey, Bernadette will kill them all for like signing these letters. Like, you are giving them a
Mhm.
death sentence. And he's like she could read their signature. And he's like, it's on their church letterhead. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, she'll just burn everyone in the church. She's
Mhm.
not going to be willy-nilly about this. And Father Timothy also shows him this poster that's a hippogriff
Which is
pissing
the symbol for Bernadette.
Bernadette pissing on Gregory's symbol, the Tree of Life. And a blue tit is sitting on the shoulder of the hippogriff, which means that Bess is behind Bernadette. And Greg is
How
like,
freaking funny.
how dare they debase Bess's character like that? And it's like, you've wanted to keep her safe this entire time. That shows that like they have to kind of protect her because she's in support of your sister.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Oh, I also forgot to mention they like just kind of say like don't look too closely over there at the dead Salvatore in the room because Claire's like, no one's seen Salvatore. And
That
they're
was
like,
weird too. Because she mentions like, "Oh yeah, your cousin is still alive," and
Thomas is
she,
alive.
like Thomas is alive. That was not a deep cut. And Greg's like, "Oh really? It wasn't a deep cut? I totally thought I killed
And
him."
then it's
And
like,
then
remember
she's
when
like,
Bess
"What
murdered
happened to
Salvatore?
Salvatore?" And they're just like, "Nothing. Don't
He's like,
don't worry about it."
he shot me and then he thought I was dead, so he walked away. And she's like, oh, Bess, did you see him on the road? And she's like, no.
Nope,
Like,
nope, never saw him.
doesn't look like anything to me. Uh, so anyway, I digress. But Father Timothy is still trying to get Greg to fight. Greg says he's not interested and says like everything he does is for Bess.
Mhm.
And he is like, look, you'll fight for the Catholics. Bernadette won't. So of course I'm being a little bit like self-serving because I need to be. And he's like, well, sorry, it's over. And he says that he's going to get Elizabeth on board. And Greg
Mhm.
is like, I'm going to talk to your sister about this. And Father Timothy's like, but I'm a
Don't get the
sexist.
women involved.
Like, yeah, he's like, but I'm a sexist. Why would I do that? Um,
Women don't need to be involved in this. It's like,
so
oh,
anyway,
okay,
then they
Father Timothy.
start traveling and they're gonna camp for the night, but Clara's like, I can't sleep on the ground. And they're like, Clara, the whole point was for you to rough it. And she's like, not like that.
She's like, I can't use a tent. Are you kidding me? Let's go to this inn.
And so she takes them to the grubbiest inn of their
Yep.
lives, and they get two rooms, and they all go to bed. But Elizabeth wakes during the night, and she realizes that Claire's not there. And she also realized that she forgot to put the honey salve on Greg. So she goes
On his
over to,
wound.
yes, she goes over to give it to Channing to like help him with his dressing. And Channing's also not there. And she's like, I bet they're
Oops.
downstairs. And Greg is like, well, they're two adults. And she's like, fine, I'm going to go downstairs. And he's like, you can't go downstairs. You're unchaperoned.
Well, he's
She
also
also,
like, people will recognize you. Like, they may not recognize them, but they'll definitely recognize the king's daughter. Like, you're more recognizable.
and he also points out, like, she doesn't mention that she almost got attacked in the hallway.
Yeah,
And he is like, look, I
which
just want you to
could
be
have been
careful.
terrible because the guy that saw her in the hallway, he was like thinking that she was a prostitute or something.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, no. And she doesn't mention any of this to Greg. And I'm like, that would be kind of traumatic too, to be in a
Yeah.
situation where you could have been assaulted. But
And so it's very strange. And so the next day she like brings in Channing, and Channing talks to Greg and he's like, "Hey, our wheel's broken and it's a little bit fishy. I think someone might have broken it." And so they have this big discussion of like economics and if they should pay to replace the wheel or if they should fix it themselves. And they figure out that they're going to fix it themselves for cost effectiveness, but not before Bess comes in and she's like, "Yell at Clara and Channing right now because they were downstairs dancing together and they were supposed to be dressed as a nun and a vicar and they weren't." And Greg is kind of like, "Well, I mean, a nun and a priest dancing together would have been weird."
yeah, like that
and
would definitely have caught some eyes.
and so he's just kind of like, "Well, this is what happened. They had a good time. They're not going to be recognized. Like, you're different. You have to realize your own privileges." And, but like, Claire's also like, "We were being discreet." And it's like, "No, you weren't, girl. Like, what are you talking
No,
about? You're the
absolutely
least
we're not,
discreet
because they're like
person."
dancing all over the place. They're like having a good time. She and boyfriend are free to be in
Yeah.
love.
And she's being super ridiculous. Like, they go to
Yeah.
discuss the wheel, and she's like, "Let's go to this shop to buy clothing." And Bess has to be like, "We're dressed as nuns. What are you talking about?" And she still makes her go inside. And it's just a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then later, Channing runs in and he's like, "Oh my gosh, the person who wants to marry Clara put up missing posters of her." And now Bess is like, "Well, you shouldn't have been out dancing then. Like, you should have been thinking about this. You're
Yep.
missing. You ran away." And this is where we find out that uh Lord Akram, who is her betrothed, is known as the Rising Loaf because he was a baker who became a baron because he inherited an Italian vineyard and their dad is an alcoholic, so he
Yep.
wanted to keep that close. And so he kind of got to climb this rising social ladder. And we also find out that it's Joshua's daddy. Um,
Joshua's dad, who was kind to Elizabeth earlier
Well,
on.
the dad was not, but Joshua was. And she was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I like
Joshua
Joshua.
was.
He'd be a great stepson." And Claire's like, "He's our age. What are you talking about?" Because Elizabeth keeps going like, "Well, it's not the worst thing to get married to someone with that much power." And Claire's like, "I would never marry him. I couldn't marry someone I didn't love." And Channing proposes to her in these moments,
And they
and
kiss,
she
and it's a
says
little too
yes.
long because it makes Greg and
Also,
Elizabeth uncomfortable.
we find out that there's nothing in this world that Elizabeth is more fearful of than pagans because they have magical
Which is
powers.
weird.
And I did like this because Greg is like, "Oh, she doesn't understand how the world works. We should have a
Yeah.
conversation about that later." Um, and they decide that with the missing poster, they should probably fix the wheel right away. And Claire's like, "Well, I'll come with Channing to go buy a new wheel." And they're all like, "No, you won't. What are you talking about?"
Like, just let him do it, please. And then
Um,
she's like, here, take this money. Be back soon, my love.
And then Bess is like, "So I never expected you to fall in love with a stable boy." And Greg's like, "Don't mock people who are in love." And Bess is like, "I never mock people." And I'm like, "You
You
mocked his
do.
fiance all the time." And so he kind of scolds her a little bit. It's a good theme of like Greg
Yeah.
scolds Elizabeth any chance he can get. Um, and he hands her this little wooded necklace that's a bird with the blue tit for her. And it's a nice moment between siblings.
Yeah, because
Um,
we learned that he actually is like really good at like woodworking and likes to whittle and makes like all these shapes and characters and stuff. And
yeah.
she had like a whole chest full of things that she had to leave behind that he had made.
And then the next day, the innkeeper is like, "The one road in town is flooded." And they're all like, "That tracks." And so they can't leave. And they didn't send Channing out there because like Greg's like, "I would have checked it myself." And I'm like, "Have Channing go. That's why he's there. That was the whole
Yeah,
point of
they
him."
don't utilize him in the right way there.
And so then they realize that they have to uh, get out right away because the fracture in the wheel was likely intentional. Um, and it's probably done on purpose. But then all of a sudden, Channing freaks out and he says that someone came and grabbed Clara, and it was like three bodyguards and Lord Akram. And he's quick to be like, "You guys have to come help me." And they both are like, "So we committed treason, so we could die. she just has an arranged marriage that you guys don't like. And like both of them are horrifying, but we can't help you right now because we are not capable.
Which this is
And
maybe the first time when I'm like, she's not really in danger.
danger.
Like
Yeah.
they are going to be in danger. So Channing, figure it out.
Yeah, and he gets mad and he says, "You're cowards," and he stomps out. And again, I'm like, well, their lives are on the line here. So, like,
Yeah,
this was probably a very difficult decision because it's not like they dislike Clara, but they had to make a hard call.
yeah.
Um, and so then Channing leaves, he takes the horse. They have to hook up Lavender, and they're kind of deciding what to do next because Clara also had all the money. Um,
And she took all their other money that they had that
mhm.
was given to them by Mary. So now they have nothing.
Yes.
And they're just
And
living off of berries and literally counting how many berries that they're eating.
well, this happens later, but at first, Elizabeth gets them food at the inn while they're like trying to recoup. She washes dishes, she's getting everything done, and Greg is like, "Wow, she's growing up, my little girl." And then all of a sudden, we get another surprise entrance of Father Timothy, like a
Yeah.
one room play. Like all
I
of a
don't know
sudden,
how he always finds them.
Kramer just bursts into the room. Well, he says he has them followed pretty much in this chapter, but he has come with reinforcements, and they're like people who are a little bit higher up in stature to again convince Greg to
Yep.
fight. And he's just like, you guys need to get out of here. I never want to see your face again. And he's rude to the priest in a way that everyone's like, ooh, you don't mess with religious figures, but you sure did mess with him. And the priest is like, you're making a huge mistake. You need to fight for this. And then at the end, he's like, apparently you're more like Princess Bernadette. I hope you rot in hell. And it's like,
Which is
that's,
terrible. I was shocked by that moment.
I know. And so that was wild. Um, and so then they're traveling for the next 3 days. There's a situation where Greg gets mad that like Elizabeth begs for food as a nun, and
Yeah.
he's like, "You could be recognized." And she's like, "The entire point of this is that it is a disguise. So what do you want from
It's
me?"
like, this is so I can go out in the open. I'm using it the way we had wanted to.
Well, and a lot of stuff comes to a head where she talks about like, "Hey, you're being really selfish. I'm doing everything for you right now, and you're criticizing everything I do. So can
Yep.
you stop scolding me at every single thing?" And she even like points out like, "I didn't have to come here. I came here, and I'm doing it like by choice, and you're being
Mhm.
really ungrateful." And then he feels like really bad about it, and he goes to like
Yeah.
self-flagellation. He again like children of trauma where they both have wild swings.
Yeah.
But then she kind of talks about the fact that like he's always put her first, and she remembers a time where she was betrothed to this person she didn't want to be, and her brother stuck his neck out for her by like going and intervening, and she's like,
Mm.
now this is just a time where I could do it for you. And so then they keep traveling and they come upon an abbey where they want some nice porridge, and they eat some porridge, and this poor nun who is being very aggressive towards Greg as a nun who took a
This is
vow
a
of
weird description,
celibacy,
though, of like all of these people who are at this abbey. Like,
who
oh,
are
no
very
wonder
kind to
they're
them.
no wonder they're all about Greg because they're virgins. Like, what?
Well, and one of them, they're like, she talks like a baby. I don't know why. She's an adult. And it's like, well, she's probably uneducated.
Oh,
And she comes in and she's like, Greg, do you want this cinnamon? And then she just pours like an entire cup of cinnamon into his porridge.
yeah,
And then as a final thought, it's like, do you want some, Elizabeth? And they're both like anti-cinnamon in a weird way, where I was like, cinnamon sounds good in that. You were just complaining about how bad
yeah.
it tasted. But during
But
this,
it's always
there's
just like the way that Greg is thought of first that
yes.
annoys Elizabeth.
And he is very hot, 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 and everyone always notices.
Yes.
But during this time, his wound is starting to ache a little bit more, and no one really he like Elizabeth is worried about it, but he keeps being like, "Don't worry about me, everything's fine." But
He's very
then,
much deflecting any kind of thing happening to him because he's more worried about Elizabeth.
he catches fever, and he is in the throes of it. He's screaming, he's yelling at her that
Oh,
she's a traitor.
he's full out hallucinating.
Yes, he's full out hallucinating, and she has to like hold him down. They have to drug him, and he's out for like days. And when he finally comes to, they're kind of like, "Hey, you really messed up. Like, she told you you needed help, and you ignored her." And he also finds out that during this, he punched her.
Yep.
And she has a black eye. And then Greg kind of turns into like, well, woe is me. And it's like, you did all those. Like, I understand you can feel guilty, but like, you need to be sorry for her and start having realistic conversations with her. Um,
It's like maybe you need to address some of your PTSD and the
yes,
trauma that you've been through. And also maybe be a little kinder to yourself too, knowing that
yes,
you are going through a lot of trauma and that you were sick, very
yes.
sick.
And he kind of says that, like, with that anger, he recognizes that he has a lot of PTSD because he was pushing a lot of it down for fear that he was like Bernadette or fear like he was like their father.
Yeah.
And so they have this talk where he's like, do you think this is temporary? And she's like, well, of course it's temporary. Once dad dies, you can go after the throne. And he's like, no, I don't want the throne. Like, I'm done. This is done.
Yeah.
I don't want this anymore. And I'm done having this conversation. And she's a little bit shocked by this. And she's like, no, of course you could fight. And he's like, I have no interest in fighting. So, like,
Mhm.
this is it. And she kind of starts coming to terms with that. Um, and then all of a sudden, our favorite Kramer walks in because the father's back and he has a gun and he's threatening Elizabeth. Um,
Well, he's basically holding her at gunpoint until Greg will agree to basically let them go and enter into war to essentially save the Catholics.
yes, because Bernadette found out about this father's machinations and she burned down his entire church, and poor Mary has died.
Mary is dead.
And so he's wrecked with grief. And so Greg,
And he's also just kind of at the point where he's like, do you see how serious this is now? Like,
yes,
is this what it takes to impress upon you how bad I said this was going to be?
but of course the gun goes off and Father Timothy is deceased now.
It
So
malfunctioned, unfortunately.
and so then they bury Father Timothy and they kind of have another discussion about like, hey, this isn't temporary. We're done with this. This is a closing chapter of our life and I'm ready to move forward. I think Greg is buried in this abbey. And
Yeah,
Elizabeth
they're gonna
agrees.
disguise it as like him being there.
Yeah, and she agrees and they decide that they're going to move forward with their life.
In
And
exile
yeah, and they're in the Fires of Treason together. And
together.
that is the name of the book, and that is the end of the book. So, our first
They're still on the run.
historical, our first historical indie book. So, Laura, what are your
Yes.
thoughts? Quick, I know we're going to do a deeper dive next week, but what are your thoughts so far?
I mean, honestly, this book took a lot of twists and turns that I was not expecting. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting going into it, but really, like, a lot of ups and downs and a lot of things that happened that I was very surprised by.
Yeah, I was really surprised by a lot of these things too. I don't think I was, and I think it was like a lot more diplomacy than I was expecting. Like there's
Yes.
a lot more discussion of like what lives matter, and also
Mm.
like sometimes the bad guys are the ones who are in power because they're going to be, and I think that that's an interesting thing to ruminate on in this day and time. So,
I also appreciate this book just from the standpoint of like depicting people who are starting to recognize their privilege and
yes,
maybe also like come to terms with the fact that they have a lot of trauma that they need to
yes.
process. So I think that that's also a very good aspect of the book as well.
Yeah, and we will dive into more themes next week, guys,
Yes.
as we close out our discussion of the Fires of Treason.
Fires of Treason.
But while you are waiting, you can always find more content of us over on our Patreon, where we do bonus
Patreon.
content each month. We have a $1 for those who want to support, a $3, a $5, and a $10. So make sure you're
Hmm.
checking that out. Please also make sure that you're following us on all of our social platforms. We can be found anywhere. We're trying to bump up our blue sky, so please go follow
Yeah.
us over there. But we also have Instagram. We do updates on Twitter, but you know that is a hellscape. So you can do that, or you can find our reading list at ourpod.com. It does have the rest of the things for this year, and December is always a
Yes.
Wild Wild West month, so make sure you are checking that out. You
Lots of
also,
fun things.
if this is in your earballs, Laura hates when I call them
Ew,
the
I
earballs.
don't like airballs.
You know that yesterday we did a bonus episode of TV Tuesday with Ashley Anglin on Agatha All
Agatha all
Along.
along. fun.
And honestly, one of our best discussions. So
It
we
was really
had
great.
a freaking blast with her. She's amazing. She brought a lot
Mhm.
to the discussion. We loved it. So happy to have met her. So make sure that you're listening to that as well. And no, and join us over on our Discord. We're not always super
Yes.
chatty on there, but we do try to like put little updates. I just had a discussion on a recent read that I'll be discussing next week. So
I'd love
head on
to
over there.
have that be more active and have more people talk to us
We
over
would
there.
love to do that. So make sure you are joining us on all of the social platforms. And as always, we would
And thanks for
appreciate a
listening today.
yes, and we would appreciate a rate, a review, and a subscribe because those do help way more than you think they do. So please make sure that you are always doing that. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.